Today's lesson 3.9 is about distinguishing automatic stabilizers from discretionary stabilizers and being able to identify and describe the automatic stabilizers that exist in the U.S. economy. So first of all, to review briefly from yesterday's class. In class yesterday we talked about fiscal policy and how to use government spending and taxes to stabilize the economy, or basically to smooth out the bumps in the business cycle. So when do we use it? We use it to address either of our two major problems, unemployment or inflation. So I'm going to put the long run aggregate supply line on here. And this is really, of course, not how you really should think about it, but it is one easy way to make your graph work, is to just put the long run aggregate supply curve on here, and you can see that the X is to the left of this full employment output level. So if the X is over here, that means our current equilibrium level is below full employment output level. So we would know that this economy is in a recession just by looking at this graph. And when the economy is in a recession, Keynesian fiscal policy dictates that we should try to address the problem of unemployment. We're not worried about inflation, prices are relatively low, and so to address unemployment, our strategies would involve something that shifts aggregate demand to the right to make up for the problem, right? And we'll talk about those on the next slide. What are those strategies that we would use? Okay, the other problem that we might have, of course, is that we could have our X over here, right? And then we would probably be experiencing inflation. So we're at a temporary unsustainable level beyond full employment. We can probably surmise that prices are rising. And so the problem we want to address is inflation. And we would do that with policies that contract aggregate demand, also called contractionary fiscal policies, or things that would bring down spending in one of the sectors. Predominantly, we're going to be focused on government spending and consumption, but also possibly on investment. So what are the things that we do? Again, just to review quickly, to combat unemployment, we want to stimulate aggregate demand, and we would do so either by increasing government spending or by trying to stimulate consumption by decreasing taxes. Right? Those would be our primary ways to do this. The fiscal policies for fighting inflation, we want to, as we just said, decrease aggregate demand, and so we might do that by decreasing government spending or using a policy that would reduce consumption, like increasing taxes. So those are our basic fiscal policies in order to address the problems of unemployment and inflation. So those policies that we've been talking about all fall under the category of discretionary fiscal policies. The word discretionary, okay, discretionary spending, discretionary income, anything that you do with discretion, it means that it's left to your judgment. Okay, you get to use discretion. Do I want to do it or not? Your discretionary income is the income that you don't have to pay in taxes. You can spend it on something that you want to spend it on. So it's your decision. These expansionary and contractionary policies, increasing government spending, decreasing government spending, increasing or decreasing taxes, everything we've talked about is a discretionary, expansionary, or contractionary policy. But the U.S. government has also created some automatic stabilizers. And automatic stabilizers are basically stabilizers, they are passed into law, but they are created and then they continue to function in response to circumstances without anyone actually having to debate, like, are we in a recession? These automatic stabilizers just kick into action automatically in response to changes in economic conditions. So one of the advantages is that once in place, they're not as political. We don't have to debate whether or not to use them. So what are they? Well, three of our automatic stabilizers are unemployment compensation, progressive income taxes, and welfare benefits such as food stamps. So what we mean by this is unemployment compensation is the payment that people get when they lose a job. Typically when they're cyclically unemployed, they're laid off, right? They file for unemployment benefits. They might get 6 months or, depending, sometimes it's a year of benefits. So that compensation goes automatically, basically, to people who file for it when they lose their jobs. So think about when the economy is in a recession, right? So we've got our PL, our real GDP. We've got our long run. Here's our potential GDP, and here's where we are. Okay, so we're in a recession. That means that people are losing their jobs, and automatically, when they file for unemployment, they get that. Well, unemployment is government spending. Okay, it is government spending that goes to households that allows them to spend more on consumption. So when people are losing their jobs in a period of recession, there's this automatic stabilizer that kicks in and shifts aggregate demand to the right because unemployment compensation is flowing to households. So that's what we mean by an automatic stabilizer. Progressive income taxes, if you remember back from the last unit when we talked about taxes, same thing. Because remember, progressive income taxes are on your marginal income. So let's imagine that we're in a period of expansion. Okay, we're experiencing inflation. Our GDP is growing, right? What's going to happen? People's incomes are rising, and as a result, they are paying more in taxes. Okay, paying a higher percentage. So it's almost like someone imposed a tax increase in a time of economic expansion. So again, I'm just going to do a really shortcut graph here. Okay, so here we are, we're experiencing inflation, and thanks to the progressive income tax, our aggregate demand automatically shifts down because of this automatic tax increase that happens. And progressive income taxes work the same way during a recession as well, because during a recession, people's incomes are going down and they're falling into lower tax brackets. So they're paying a lower percentage. So again, it's automatic. Welfare benefits, how they work is essentially the same as what we talked about with the unemployment compensation. When people lose their jobs, they get welfare benefits, they get food stamps, and that's an automatic increase in government spending. So those are 3 significant automatic stabilizers in the U.S. economy. And now what we're going to do, and we might not get through all of this in the 15 minutes, but hopefully, is we're going to look at this PowerPoint that's going to examine some of the automatic and discretionary stabilizers. I'm going to try to increase the screen size here if I can. Oh, it doesn't want to let me. Sorry, I'm going to pause for a second, try to fix that. Okay, good. Now it's fixed. So we're going to look at this PowerPoint, and it's going to give us a bunch of examples. And what I want you to do each time is think to yourself for a second, is it automatic or discretionary? Is it expansionary or contractionary? And then I will give you the answer. So I would recommend pausing and seeing if you can write down the right answers and then checking them. So first one, government cuts personal income tax rates. This is a discretionary stabilizer because the government's actually voting and deciding to do it. And it would be expansionary because it's a tax cut. Now look at the next one and then pause after you read it. The government eliminates favorable tax treatment on long-term capital gains. Again, this is discretionary. The government is choosing to do something. It's not something simply kicking into action. And they are eliminating favorable tax treatment, which means they're essentially raising taxes on long-term capital gains. That's going to be a contractionary policy. So that's discretionary and contractionary. Next one, incomes rise. As a result, people pay a larger fraction of their income in taxes. So is it automatic or discretionary? Is it expansionary or contractionary? Well, you can see that because incomes rose and automatically people paid a larger portion or fraction of their income, that it is an automatic stabilizer. And because it's an increase in taxes, it's contractionary. As a result of a recession, more families qualify for food stamps and welfare benefits. So think to yourself, is this automatic or discretionary, expansionary or contractionary? The answer is, it is automatic and it is expansionary. The government eliminates the deductibility of interest expense for tax purposes. This is a tricky one because there's a lot of words in there that you might not be familiar with. The government eliminates, sounds like they voted, they decided something. That's a pretty good tip that it's discretionary. They eliminated the deductibility of interest expense for tax purposes. They're taking away a tax deduction, which basically means they're raising people's taxes. So that would be contractionary. I bet you can figure out this one. The government launches a major new space program to explore Mars. It is, in fact, discretionary and expansionary. The government raises Social Security taxes. Discretionary and contractionary because they're increasing taxes. Corporate profits increase. Government collects more corporate income taxes. This one is automatic, and it is contractionary because people are paying more in taxes. The government raises corporate income tax rates. This one is discretionary, and it is contractionary. The government gives all of its employees a large pay raise. Again, discretionary. This one's expansionary because the government's putting more money out there to stimulate spending. All right, that is the end of the PowerPoint, and that is the end of our slides for today.